Welcome to The Uncertain. It's a fully 3D point-and-click adventure game following an engineering robot that has a limited understanding of the human race, which seem to have recently been wiped off the face of the earth in some kind of not yet described war. The reason for my phrasing being so sketchy is because instead of what seems to have become the normal, full but incomplete beta system most games have adapted, my opinions this time are based on a 25-minute demo of what is to come. You know, like the good old days. The first thing that hit me about this was that the graphics are incredibly pretty. Instead of the usual cel-shaded stuff that Telltale has been pumping out for years now, this has gone for a much more realistic approach. And because this is set on Earth, it actually has some colour, something which is usually skimped on in sci-fi games. This alone sets it apart from the usual metallic grey blur of most other robotised future scenarios that we're all so familiar with. Of course, because it wants to show off just how great it looks, you get lots of scenes laid out just to let you ogle at the detail. I've noticed the odd texture here and there which isn't quite as high res as the others, but it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. I'm unsure if this is exactly how the first episode will start out in the full game, but it works you into the environment nicely with some relatively easy tasks which allow you to wander around freely and explore some of the environment, grabbing your character's impressions of certain items. Your first task is to find a battery to power up the little radio. Once you have this, you get your first demonstration of item interaction, which is a nice touch. It's well animated and gives you a bigger feeling of control, even if it is essentially just pushing buttons when it tells you to. There's also some character interaction on display, but not really enough to give you a grasp of how deep the choice system might go. It looks like you'll be limited to 4 options for the dialogue, but these at least seem to be slightly more descriptive than those seen in Fallout 4. On the gameplay side of things, the part I found the most interesting is the puzzles that it showed, which while they were relatively easy to get your head around, well, if I'd actually read the instructions before fumbling around blindly anyway. They presented enough of a challenge while not falling into the trap of needing a walkthrough every step of the way, which I find can kill the enjoyment in some point-and-click games. One thing to note is that from the demo, there doesn't seem to be an in-game hint option, which I feel is a feature all point-and-click titles should have these days. The overall atmosphere of the demo was pretty chilled, the music was slow and soothing, and the pace was pretty slow. But then it did stop just as it looked like everything was about to go down. How else would they hook everyone in? I feel like I shouldn't say too much on the story side of things because of the type of game it is, but the concept as a whole seems pretty solid. It's a robot intrigued by the human race who is exploring the various scrap left over to try and build up new equipment to help in his everyday life, and to gain a better understanding of the world. There isn't a huge amount more to say given that it's only a brief demo of what is to come, but everyone will be able to get their hands on the first episode on September 22nd, unless that date changes again. Assuming they stick to their plan, there are 3 episodes planned with about a 3 or 4 month wait between each one. This means you could be left wondering what will happen next for a long time if you pick it up straight away, but this isn't anything new for point-and-click titles. In terms of pricing, I don't think anything has been announced yet, but I would assume that there will be an option to buy the full set or just episode 1 on its own, as this seems to be the standard at the moment. For me, they've certainly piqued my interest, and assuming the pricing isn't ridiculous, I'll certainly be thinking about getting it in the long run. Generally, I prefer to wait for the full story to be complete, so that I don't lose interest or forget about it partway through and need to replay chapters to try and remember what was actually happening. All in all, it looks promising, and if you can get your hands on the demo, it's definitely worth trying yourself.